Good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, July 22nd, and we're going to start a roll call for the City of Chester Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Mayor Roots,
Present.
Deputy Mayor West,
Present.
Chairman Davis, I am present. So today, currently, the arranged agreement was to go over the fee schedule for the Finance Department as well as the HR Department. Am I correct in saying that? Via our originally discussed agenda. Okay. And with having conversations with our new CFO, Mr. Richard Troutman, we have discussed that we would like to present some more information via liquid fuels. What else are we presenting, Mr. Troutman?
The June financials,
June financials.
a summary follow-up to the pension financials.
Okay.
So those three items.
Okay. So those three items are the new items that would like to be added to this new meeting schedule. And with that being said, given that the fees and the fee schedule is important, I do believe the priority should be to discuss some of that more imperative information that you would like to discuss, Mr. Troutman. Do you have any information via printout that you can present to us?
I have, I sent it via email. I did not print it out.
Okay.
I have one copy of a PowerPoint that I can distribute, but I was not prepared to hand out physical copies.
I think you have it all, Chairman, in that upper pack.
This one, City of Chester.
That's what you
Okay.
sent.
Oh, yep, thank you.
It's it right here. You
Yes.
have it.
Thank you. Oh, we are going to talk through this today.
Yes, so we are going to talk through this today, just briefly, because what I would not like to do as the chair is to continue to table this information, given as though we have a city council meeting this
Yeah.
Wednesday, where our chief of staff will be delivering a quarterly report, and it will be very imperative that the public receive some of this more imperative information that you have today. So even though it wasn't originally scheduled, if it is okay with the rest of the members of this committee, as well as myself, we would like to hear what you have ready to present today.
Sure. So,
Hold on one second, Mr. Troutman. Is that okay with the rest of this committee?
Yes.
So we're not doing the fee schedule.
We're not going to do the fee schedule first. No, we're going to go over this, the liquid fuels, we're going to go over the pension, and as well as the June budget, monthly budget.
okay. So for simplicity, the top document that you have is liquid fuels? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that first then. Is what you have in front of you is the liquid fuels audit. It covers the period of 2021 and 2022. It is conducted by the Pennsylvania Department of the Auditor General. And there was, as far as the results go, I extracted the quote, "It did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that we consider to be material weaknesses," 1 point. Second point, tests disclosed no instances of noncompliance. And then the third point is that there was one finding, and that was late receipt of allocation. What this is the filing is due January 31st of each year. In this case, and then the funds are received in March from the Commonwealth. In the case of Chester, the 2022 was filed in April, so it was filed a couple months late, and the funds were received June 2nd. So the finding was the filing wasn't done timely, therefore the funds were received late, therefore the city lost out on interest that might have been earned or the ability to spend the money. We did get all the funds, we just got it late.
So what type of impact does that have on the projects?
It should have none because there should have been some carry forward of money that can be used. So it should not have any impact on the actual delivery of projects. And the stated reason in the audit from the staff that was on site at the time was that it was submitted late because of the bankruptcy transition. So as a follow-up, I looked at 2023 and 2024 funds. The filings were filed the first week of February, which was still technically late, and the funds were received in May and April. Again, the money was received, so we were made whole that way. We lost the opportunity to earn a couple of months' worth of interest on those funds. That's the liquid fuels audit.
Okay, and other than, it says here, other than the transition we went through in 2022 as a state-appointed receiver, which led to us filing bankruptcy, as you just mentioned, do we have any idea why we keep filing late as a city?
All I can say to you at this point is it's on everybody's calendar and it won't be late for 2025.
Okay.
Next topic would be, do you want to talk about the pension document? You should have in front of you a one-page document. Thank you, Mayor. That one-page grid,
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
the observations that I'm making here is the intent of this is to supplement what Ms. Taylor provided as the controller to council when it was first available. I thought it might be helpful to recap some of the key dollars and key information that was inside of this very technical document. It's one of the most technical documents that exists within the municipal government. So with that, I would point out that you can read this for the three different funds. There's a little footnote that says net cash increase for 2023. That's footnote 1. I thought it was important for council and the public to realize that as distressed and what I'm going to perceive as a lot of attention on the pensions, it would be worth noting that in 2023, the amount of money that went into the plans, in addition to what was needed to fund the plan for that year, was roughly $12 million between the three plans. So the city did a substantial solid in increasing the amount of cash going into each one of the three plans. Doesn't solve the issues. It is a significant step forward, and every indication is that same kind of performance should be done for the current year as well. So that's the point of footnote 1. Footnote 2 shows that where are we relative to the requirements? What's the funding side and what's the required side? It's formulated into a simple percentage. And there you have 38% for the police, 61% for the fire, and 81% for the non-uniform. And I'll come to that. So the state defines those percentages in terms of distress. So if you are starting at the bottom, if you are less than 50%, then you are considered severe distress. That would be what the police plan is at 38.4%. The state defines 50 to 69% as moderate distress. That would be the fire plan. And it defines minimal distress as 70 to 89%, which is what the non-uniform O&E plan would be. So that gives you a little bit of context around those percentages. Then I thought the other third important point to highlight was the unpaid past year MMO. So for those who aren't familiar,
1 second, Mr. Troutman,
Sure.
question. So going back to number 2, the percent
Sure.
of liability. In a perfect world, what would those percentages need to look like for the city of Chester?
Oh, they should be at least in the minimal distress, and if everything is really where it should be, would be in the 90s.
Okay.
So there's a gap analysis that we would do to catch up, and I'm sure the receiver and others have done that type of analysis. We have the Act 205 funds that are coming in, so there is progress being made on these. Witness footnote 1. So there's progress being made to catch up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then, as I was saying on point 3, the unpaid past year MMO, which is really the receivables. So the MMO, for those that might not be familiar, is the annual minimum requirement for the city to pay in, or any entity in the Commonwealth to be paying in. It's our annual contribution that's expected for each of the plans. And in this case, it hasn't been paid by the city for the last few years, which is why it's been built up as a receivable. And so it's 38 million, 2.3 million, and 2.7 million respectively. And one, just to keep it in front of everybody, so we all recognize the challenge that is in front of the city. But 2 is, the 2 plans are fairly within striking range of being able to get that hurdle met and then be able to start increasing into the 70 and 80%. So the 2 plans have a clear, I'm not going to say it's minimal, but there's a clear workable approach that can be done for those 2, and then it's just going to require constant work with the police fund to get that one out of the 38 into the 40s, into the 50s, into the 60%, et cetera.
All right, let me make sure I heard you right.
Sure.
You said that in the last few years, we haven't paid into the MMO. I don't think that's correct, but there have been years prior to the last few years that we haven't paid.
Thank you. That's a more accurate. I was incorrect the way I worded it, that there were years that were skipped. That would be a fair way, I think, to say it. There were years that were skipped, and those years are sitting there needing to be repaid. So thank you for the correction.
So in the perfect world, if it rained money, we would do, if we wanted to pay a house off early, we'd pay what was due plus more to
Yes.
catch up to the arrears.
Exactly. And so that's why I pointed out the 2.3 and 2.7. I mean, it's $5 million, so it's not chump change, but it is, in the grand scheme of things, reasonable targets to look to say we can get 2 of the plans out if we do have cash that can be redeployed or reworked to address that. And I would suggest every year we have to pay, typically it's whatever your discount rate is. So typically it's 7.5% is what's common among municipalities. So we're paying 7.5% in all likelihood on that money that's sitting there. So to the point that we could pay that down or off, and I'm saying this without consulting the receivers and the big picture, but conceptually paying them off, we pay ourselves 7.5% that can be rechanneled into other purposes.
All right, I'm trying to do the math. What's 7.5%
On
of
40
$40 million?
Yeah, on 40-some million. So just take 10% would be 400,000. 40 million, 10%, 4 million.
Okay,
So you're looking at 3 million-ish.
okay.
And you get my point.
Mhm.
This is, as I said to Mr. Davis, I think part of my mission is to explain what's happening, obviously account for the books, but also some part of it's educational. And I don't never want to insult people's intelligence. I just, we'll figure out where that equilibrium is, but this is the kind of thing I think that will help decision makers figure out where priorities should be.
Yes.
So that's my intent, is to just work through that. Any other
But-
questions on the pension piece?
I have a question.
Sure.
Isn't it the responsibility, I know we make decisions, but isn't it your responsibility to show us, you're telling us what has been happening and the years that we've been like in trouble, but then how do we get out of this? Do you have any recommendations? What are you gonna do to show us how to get either caught up or out of this? I mean, there should be a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere, somehow.
And I believe there is. And to your point, I believe that's part of what goes with my responsibility, is not only accounting for it, but helping to provide guidance and decision-making. So I fully plan to work with the leadership and with the receivers to figure out the best allocation of resources to accomplish the best mix. And that sounds esoterical, but we have to figure out what the needs are of the infrastructure and the pension and other needs, and then figure out where the best place and the best path. And honestly, I don't have enough information yet to sit here and lay that out. But conceptually, I would agree with you.
Other than the 7.5%, is there other fees lumped onto that, like a penalty, or is that considered the penalty?
I'd have to double check because I haven't really been dealing with this. But I don't want to abdicate responsibility. I would just say my experience in the past was it was the discount rate was the penalty. And you have to pay it back to the first day that it was due, not the end day that you could pay it off. So that's already been factored in to the financials as to what the accrued interest is. So we're paying interest on interest.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's within the body of the document. So hopefully that helps take a very complex document and boil down to some of the facts.
Most certainly does. Thank you.
Then the last thing would be the financials. And let me skip different decks here. So what I would start out with the June 24 financial statements are a couple of background statements. The financials are unaudited. They are a combination of actuals, estimates, and projections. They are done on a modified cash basis. This is about as wonky as I want to get in these kind of forums, but what I'm really saying to you is a fairly typical way to produce reasonably accurate, reasonably presentable financial statements without going through all the accounting things that are done at a year end.
That was in your email, Mr. Troutman, but we don't have that via printed out in front of us right now.
Okay?
Want this one?
That's just a check run. We were talking about
Oh, it's just the check runs?
that's what we have in front of us.
Okay, you don't have the front couple pages.
Correct.
All right, so if you will bear with, I'll get you the copies. And I apologize for that. And I'm going to keep it at a high level anyway, summary kind of thing. So the financials are done on a modified cash basis, which means that we don't go through all the things that are done for a typical year end. That would require all the juxtapositions of the money to make sure it gets into the right year. So I'll give you a couple examples. One example is in January of this year, the city received $5 million of Pennsylvania loan for the whole year. It doesn't get spread out. It's booked in January for the year. In January, we also paid $800,000 as the last piece of last year. That's in the numbers. We also paid $1 million for an insurance policy in January. That's in the numbers. We don't spread it out. So it's a cash basis. But we also should be reflecting the year-to-date budget that parallels that. So we're kind of factoring all that in at a higher level without going into the details and spending a lot of time plus or minusing information that will get lost in the weeds. It needs to be done, and it will be done for year end, but it's not done each month. So just so we all understand the basis of this.
Currently, how often does the city of Chester review its, what's the proper term for it? Its budget in its entirety, as well as its quarterly budgets? So I know that for, let's say for some municipalities, they might review their budget 3 times a year, and I guess a function.
Sure. So I would say it's up to individual personalities
Okay.
of the city or the community or the municipality. Smaller might not do it at all except for once a year. Set it, work with it, use it, and go from there. I don't know the familiarity with Chester's history.
For a city that's in bankruptcy, what would you feel as though would be the best practice for us to review
I
our
would
budget?
think that, first of all, I look at it monthly.
Okay.
And I have a list of things that I think the budget could be adjusted for at some point in time. It becomes a balancing act between knowing what's happening and then going through the formal process of adjusting it. So one of the things that you're going to see is decision was made to do the personnel because there are so many budget adjustments. So that's going to be coming before the council imminently. I'm not sure if it's this Wednesday or when it's happening, but there is a whole list of differences on the budgeting of compensation. So to that point, it should be done whenever it's deemed appropriate that it makes sense. So it's not wasting a lot of people's time and effort for $4.83, but also it makes sense if there's a number of changes that will affect how easy it is to interpret tracking to the budget. So we're going to make some of those changes imminently because of that assessment that's been made. Okay?
But those changes, are you gonna sit down with mayor and council to, like in a setting to go over it,
Yeah, I'm more than willing,
while you're,
sure.
you're
And
making changes that you need us to vote on?
yes, I would not blindside you if that's one way to interpret your question. Right now, the one I've referred to is I've weighed in on what's happening through the chief and through the receiver. I have added input to that and done reconciliations of that nature. I don't know who's doing the presentation right now or when it is coming forth. But I'm more than happy to work through that because my commitment to you is not to blindside you on these types of things. It is all about trying to row in the same direction or whatever analogy you want to use. But there are clear differences between what was approved December 26th of 2023 and what we're actually working with on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Okay? So other big picture comments would be is these financials are focused on operating information, cash, revenues, expenses, not techie balance sheets, net asset statements, cash flow statements. So it's designed to be more interpretive of what's needed to run the quote-unquote day-to-day business. It's focused on the big general fund and a few specialty funds like ARPA or liquid fuels. It's not focused on the specialty, a lot of the specialty funds. And as we've just talked at length about, is based off of the 1226 approved budget. None of the budgeted information has changed, or would it change. That's a stable. That will not change unless council has approved the change. So with that, a few highlights. We have $27 million of operating cash, $27 million.
Excuse me, Mr. Drummond, I'm sorry. We
No,
have
I'm
a
sorry.
question.
When you make changes like to line items, okay, in the budget, it does have an impact over on the total amount at the end, right?
Yes, yes. And what I'm saying is, I will not change the year-end budget unless it's been formally changed. I inherited a 1226-23 budget, and that's what I live with until there's a change. And that's what's documented in the financials.
Because there's already been changes like with salaries, with new people coming in, they're, you know, and filling some old positions that we already have.
Yes,
You know, and they're making more than who was there. Oh, I'm sorry. Because I had asked about this before, you know, there's some changes to salaries of
Yes.
new persons coming in. And they're making more than the persons who held those same positions before, you know. So, you know, how are you, that's going to be impactful
yes.
on our budget. And
And so what,
how do we do this? Where's the money coming from?
and that's what's imminently going to be presented. Literally, part of my task that I need to do was go through all 200 and some positions and compare what was budgeted December 26th to what's being paid or what's being proposed to come up with the delta, the difference.
Mhm.
And that's what's going to be packaged and presented so that we get the compensation component up to the budget. The simple answer is there are so many vacancies that there is enough money to work with, but that's not the detailed answer that you'll get.
And then those 90-some accounts that we had with money in them, again, the money that's in those accounts, they were already budgeted to a particular department, or is this just money there dormant?
The number of bank accounts, I'm not quite sure the 90 you're referring to. There are 90-some different funds that the city has, which are groupings of accounts. And each fund may or may not have a bank account. And most of them do not have a bank account. We have a little over 24 bank accounts. Those bank accounts are grouped, and when you look at the financial statements, you'll see that there's 3 groupings of bank accounts. The first grouping are operating accounts. Those are all the funds that are available to the city to do the day-to-day operations. That consists of roughly $27 million. We have, for several reasons, split that up among different banks. Never a good idea to have all the money in one bank. So we have flexibility that way. And so that's $27 million of operating cash. The second grouping are specialty accounts. That is roughly $17 million. The biggest of that are the ARPA funds. They have a designated specific reason. So those should not be blended in with the total cash to mislead how much cash there is to work with. So we segregated that last month when we started doing this to give a fair interpretation of what cash really means. And then there's a third grouping, which is fiduciary cash. That is money that the city has that really is other people's money. And we are fiduciarily responsible for managing it. So that clearly has to be segregated. And those are your pension funds, your developer's escrow fund, and your fire escrow funds. Those are principal ones. There's a few others, but those are primarily, those are fiduciary groupings, and those are designated that way. And as I just said, that's why we split them out last month, to give a better impression of how much cash is where it is. Does that help with your
That was
cash?
pension, developer funds, and what was the last one again?
The fire escrow.
IRS.
When a house, for example, is gutted, the insurance
Right.
company will put money with the city pending the certificate of occupancy. That's a simplistic definition. And so then the funds get released when that's proper. Okay?
And roughly how much does the city have in that account?
I knew you were going to ask me. Hold on. 50 million.
Thank you.
And it's largely the pensions. So it's unfair to say there's $95 million with the city. That would be misleading. That's why we broke it up into the components.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
So that's the cash piece of it. Staffing, 56 vacancies as of the end of June. 11 people are on workers' compensation. We have 11 injured workers who,
How many vacancies again?
56.
56?
You're going to find that, and again, you don't have it in front of you, but that was something we added to the financial statements last month. So you can see that as a critical piece of information. Okay?
And the last one you just said, I'm sorry,
11.
people injured.
11 injured.
We have 11 coworkers that are injured. Revenues for the city were 43 million, which is ahead of expectations. Expenses are 31 million, which is less than what we expected. The vacancies is the biggest driver of that cause, reason. And the 43 million is because many of the city's revenues are front-ended in the year. The obvious one are the taxes. I mentioned the 5 million from the state. Loans are considered revenue in municipal government. So they're front-ended. They'll even out more toward as the year progresses. And so the big question is, and then payable summary, the one that you have in front of you, we expended $5.1 million last month. So the simple math, multiply that by 12, and that gets you roughly equal or less than what our total budget is for the year. Therefore, we expended a proportionate amount for the year. Projected year end, we're looking to be, at this point in time, still looking toward being on budget. There's a lot of big variables still to be worked out. We have the total ARPA package. We have the vacancies, how many get filled. We have the $3+ million worth of debt that's budgeted, that's waiting for a final determination, as I understand it, from whether we're required to pay part, sum, all of it this year. So there's some big pieces that have been budgeted that are still to be determined. And the last thing I would comment on, those are actually my comments. That's the presentation, and unless there's any other questions.
Before I go, any questions from any of the members of the board?
I have none. Good job.
Questions?
No.
So mine isn't necessarily a question, more so a statement. I want to thank you for taking the time to present this information to the members of council. I know that these are things that we have all been asking for, as well as the public. So being as though I'm happy that we had this meeting, I know that we have city council on Wednesday, and some of this information will be very, very beneficial to present. Of course, not as an entirety, but some, small snippets to the community. I think that they would greatly appreciate that. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you for the diligence that you put into your work, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thanks the team. I'll take it back to them.
Thank you. So currently, going over all that bulk of the information, I think it would be, well, we have how much time allocated for this meeting?
Up to 2 o'clock?
Would you like to go over, I know I spoke to Mr. Mack last week, and he has, I think, 3 to 4 different fees to go over for your fee schedule for the HR department, so that'll take 2 to 3 minutes. Would you like to go over the fee schedule that you have for the finance department now, or we can wait and present that to the council as a whole? I know that was some conversations, it was put to me that there was some internal conversations had within City Hall that I wasn't privy to, but I'm not opposed to, taking
Yeah.
that approach if it's the most meaningful and beneficial thing for the city of Chester.
I would respectfully suggest, the last I heard, the plan was all of them done at once, so that you hear the totality and the whole council can ask questions. So that's my understanding of what's been laid out. So I would defer to those conversations and that approach.
That was my understanding too, and like I said, I am fine with that approach if it's in your professional opinion, the most healthy practice.
Yeah, I think that would be best for it to be done in once, in totality.
Yes, because Public Works will also, under the budget and finance, the information presented on Wednesday, they'll be a part of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So we will table the rest of the fee schedule that you had ready to present. However, we will hear HR department since you are ready to present today, and that'll be a quick presentation. We'll happily accept that information. So, thank you, Mr. Trauman.
Sure, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Mack, could you please speak
Okay.
directly into the mic?
I'm
Because
sorry.
last time you spoke, I got nothing you said.
So I'm not sure if everyone has my HR fee schedule that was submitted. Everyone have a copy of it?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Very.
The only addition that we're requesting is for records request fee. We're asking to have that be indicated as $100 for each request as a flat fee. The other fees were civil service, one for fire application, one for police application, which is already set at $35. We're not requesting a change for that. So the only thing that we're requesting to add in was the records request.
Can you define what the records requested?
Okay.
entails?
A basic example is, I'll give you an example, workers' comp. We have 11 people on workers' comp. Usually if there's a law firm involved, they'll ask for the employee's file. In the file, they'll ask for, or in their request, they'll ask for, of course, the file. They may ask for pay stubs, other documentation. Some of it can be a little, some of it can be a lot, depending on the employee, how long they've been here. And we settled on a flat fee of $100. We can actually charge up to $200, which the attorney would actually indicate that if a request is more than $200, it needs pre-approval. So we just wanted to settle on a flat fee of $100, which is kind of standard.
So this is what we're assessing the applicant, whoever is requesting the records? Like, is this an employee request?
No, this is usually a law firm. 9 times out of 10 is going to be a law firm. 9 times out of 10 is going to be a request where you have someone on workers' comp. And they're wanting the employee's file and to see the hours they worked, the pay they had, and that's part of sometimes the negotiation or selling the case. That's just some of the basic information they want, besides seeing the employee medical records if it's in there. So it's some, and the reason for the $100 was sometimes you had to pull it from archives, sometimes you had to pull it from different systems, sometimes may have to go to a different department, get something, get emails, things like that. So we wanted to settle on a flat fee instead of a per paper fee.
Okay, my last question is, have you had a conversation with both the fire and police commissioner about these application fees? Like, are they the standard fees?
Oh, they're old. They were already actually in there.
Okay, so
That's not a change. I'm just,
no, I got you. So now that brings us to my next question. Do you feel as though, or does anyone, I guess, the public, have any concerns about us just remaining with the same old fees? Like, do we need to change these fees to keep up with times? Are they accurate? Are they too low? Are they too high?
I would say you don't want to change it because when you increase it, you can deter applicants. And of course, we want applicants.
Right.
But we've had about roughly about 12 people that came to get the application for police. And that was maybe as of Thursday. There's actually one down there right now getting the application. So that number could have increased. And I believe 4 of the 12, and this estimate had brought it back. No one's complaining about the fee. They come ready with the money order for it.
Yeah, I understand that the City of Chester's Police Department is, looking for more people, more bodies. So I didn't know if this was an old fee. I didn't know if it needed to be changed. It's currently $35. I don't feel as though that's too high, but if it's, we need to change it because the situation we are, it's at $25. I didn't know we need to visit that conversation. I wasn't sure exactly how far this was looked into as far as our fees. If we need more police officers, it would make sense to me to lower the fee to, one, make it more feasible, and to make it more attractive for people. Like, oh, it was $40, now it's $20.
Yeah.
Most people
Yeah.
round up, $35 is really $40.
Yeah.
But if it's fine.
It was set out.
Okay.
I don't think there's any need to
Then
change it. Look, we
sounds
talked
good.
about that before as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Back to the records request. This is a request for anything. You just gave an example of workman's comp, but this is any request that comes in HR for records?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Is this
again,
a new fee, or we
I
weren't charging
want it to be
before?
a new fee because it's,
No, my question is, were we charging before? Okay.
we're not charging at all.
Okay,
And
That's all I need to know.
we should.
all right, I agree.
It's standard. No one's going to, and I tell you, no one's going to balk at paying $100 for records request.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I, back in May, you sent an email acknowledging some new employees. And, but that doesn't happen all the time. So I'm just asking today if we can be more consistent with that when new employees come on, because a lot of times council will come in and we don't know who people are.
I have been, I believe I've sent at least 4 emails indicating when someone starts. It's, I title it personnel updates. It's the same email. I actually go back to it and update it and indicate who started, who's no longer here, who's resigned, promotions as well, if they're warranted. So I believe I have done at least 4. If you're, now, I would ask, or if you're not receiving them, maybe I'm doing something wrong, because I know police has a email box, fire has a email box, which I didn't know at the time. And so I know they may have missed a few. But I've tried to been consistent with those emails. Those personnel updates is the title of the email. I just want to keep it consistent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought, okay,
No, I'm just saying thank you.
thanks.
So before we adjourn this meeting, is there any questions, comments, or concerns from anybody in the public, community, department heads?
I have a
Mr.
question.
Special Assistant, do you have anything?
So, for the fee schedules, I can let, the Public Works Director know that he will be presenting whatever fee changes that we have in Public Works.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it doesn't have to be on an agenda or anything like that, it's just all fees.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
To my knowledge.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.